I'm curious, you've been in a lot of games like this. You've been in a lot of games where going back to college, just sort of like high profile rivalries where the teams are barking at each other beforehand. There's a history. There's a lot of emotion going into it. It felt to me like the emotion got the best of Memphis a little bit. And Golden State had a couple guys, like Poole went off, Ty Jerome was great. The other person I wanted to ask you about on Golden State in particular was Wiseman, who feels like it was actually great defensively, and it feels like it's sort of carving out somewhat of a role for himself, which is, probably unexpected based on how we started the season. But it felt like with Memphis, like they almost like threw themselves off because of how much they've hyped this game up for themselves. And I'm curious if you think that that's a real thing or it's more just a credit to Golden State coming out and playing well.
I think it's a real thing that happens in sports. I think it's a valid point, Tommy. There's certainly X's and O's, and there's certainly game plans and reacting to those game plans and making plays in real time. There's all of that. Then there's the emotional and the mental side of sport. And if you look at some of the factors leading up to this game, right? Ja Morant's comments that no one in the West worries him. It's the first Christmas game in Memphis Grizzlies history. So it's the first Christmas game for Dillon Brooks and JJJ and Desmond Bane and Ja Morant, all these guys that have spent their whole careers in Memphis. They're on the road on the other side of the country. So maybe they're dealing with FaceTimes all day. Maybe they brought their families out. Like, there's a lot that goes into playing on Christmas. It's not just another normal game. Perk mentioned this on First Take, which I thought was great. Like, the Christmas Day games feel unlike any other regular season game. There's a playoff feel to it. The Warriors know that.
Yeah.
And the Warriors played like that. So I do think that's a factor. I'm still so bullish on the Grizzlies. I think, their offense will get in the top 10, in the top 7 once Bane gets back into rhythm and back into shape. After such a long layoff, he hasn't been particularly good in his 2 games back. My concern with them, this is really like legitimately my only concern with them, assuming Desmond Bane returns to how he played in the first 12 games, is Jaren Jackson Jr. and Dillon Brooks are their 2 best defenders, and they both foul a ton. Yeah, and we saw that last night. Foul trouble is a legitimate issue with those 2 guys. And granted, Jaren Jackson Jr. is being required to protect the rim on that team, and Dillon Brooks is being required to guard the other team's best player. So they're going to foul more than the average guy like me who's going to hide on defense. I get that. It's some of the bad fouls, the reaches, the offensive screens. Dillon Brooks had one yesterday on a loose ball, and it's just, dude, you guys are so valuable for your team. You have to figure out a way to stay on the court because you're gonna foul.
Yeah, I had this. I don't know if this is updated after yesterday, but this was going into the game yesterday with Jaren Jackson Jr. They're first in since he's come back. They're first in defense. They're first in half court defense, and they're first in at the rim field goal percentage defense. Right. And so to that point with him in particular, like, what is it a mental block? Like, what do you do to not do this? Because it does feel like when he's playing how he's capable of playing defensively, and you've been saying this all year, they probably are the best team in the NBA, maybe them and the Celtics, but they're in the conversation. They're in the conversation.
You just said they probably are the best team. I want to be clear. I'm not going that far. I think they can win a championship.
I will say that as a team. I think
the Celtics are the best team in basketball.
I don't want to say best team. I will say that as a team that when Jaren Jackson is playing how he plays defensively, they don't have any holes. They don't have any holes. They are really good across the board. They're really deep. We've gone over this ad nauseum with a bunch of different. So what is? I mean, you kind of just said it, but like, what does he do?
I think it's that simple. I do. You have to. You're not going to tell him, hey man, if somebody gets beat on defense, please don't protect the rim.
Yeah.
If you're guarding Giannis in the finals, please don't foul him. Well, he's going to pick up some fouls at the rim. He's going to pick up some fouls in one-on-one matchups. It's being smarter about avoiding certain fouls. Yeah. I think it's the same thing for Dillon Brooks. The full episode of The Old Man and the Three Things is available exclusively on Amazon Music.